Hi, everybody. Welcome to another episode of KC Legends. We're going to do this one a little differently than we usually do. Normally, we have them. Hi, everybody. Welcome to Oh, Jesus. Episode of KC Legends. We're going to do this one a little differently. Well, at least I know how long the thing is. Um, we're going to do this one over Zoom. So you'll just see my face, but you will see. But you will hear from the our guest. Our guest is someone that I've been super excited to talk to, and is one of my very, very, very close friends. Um, his name is Anders. I'm bringing him in right now. So a little bit about, really quick. Hi, Frankie. How are you? Welcome. A little bit about what this is. KC Legends, as some of you already know, is a forum where people who are doing really amazing and interesting things um, can get to a chance to talk and tell their stories in a way that they may not be able to be recognized by a mainstream media or their local media, and can really get into the difficult and questions and find out more about who they are. These are always all people who you have seen in the kink community, people that you have seen in the LGBT community, but you may not know their whole story. Um, and so I have invited people. There are some past episodes for you guys to check out. We have had Athens on there, Sir Athens on there. We've had Ellen BR from BKKC, and then we did Vicky our last episode. So this episode we are doing Anders. Anders is one of the uh, hosts and owners of the Black Dog, as well as an all around amazing individual. And I cannot wait for you guys to learn more about him and his story. I think he's someone who brings a lot of joy to my life and the lives of all the people around him. And I can only hope that he will, give you guys his story just as well as he gives to me. We've had some really good private conversations, and I hope to bring some of that same energy here onto the live that we do in person. And he is here now. Hi, Anders. How are you doing?
I'm good. I'm good. Can you hear me okay?
Yes,
Super, super. How are you doing this evening?
I'm doing wonderful. And now that I get to see your face, I'm doing even better.
Aw, that's sweet.
So I wanted to have you on the show. Like I was saying, you are one of those people who I consider to be my kink mentor. I've learned a lot from you in the year or so that we have been friends, and I think that your story is so interesting, especially when you look at kind of your background and how you became the owner of a dungeon, and how you and Mistress Elliot got together. And I want to know everything. Like, I want to know it all. I just think it's so amazing being in the presence of you and Hagen and Mistress, and I want other people to see that same thing. Um, so let's start at the very beginning because it's a wonderful place to start. um,
Very beginning of what?
where so let's talk about Baby Anders.
Born in Columbia, Missouri?
Okay. So you've always been in Missouri, for the most part, because I know that you have another interesting thing about you that I like, which is that you at some point was where you've lived in DC.
Mhm.
So let's talk a little bit about how you got to the current iteration of Anders that we have now. Um,
Okay. it has been a long work in progress, and it's a work in progress that continues. I always say I'm not perfect, and I will never get there, but I'm going to keep trying. So trial and error and making mistakes along the way, which I have made plenty of. So, I grew up in Jefferson City. That's where I went to high school. So for the most part, it's not a small town, but it may as well be, even though it's a state capital. Rednecks aplenty. I went to high school in really in the 80s and late 80s, and so it was a different time than things are now, and it's really eye-opening as I look back on who I was and didn't realize I was at that point in time, particularly in terms of my sexual orientation and a lot of that I was just absolutely clueless about at the time, or maybe had an idea of, but was just in absolute denial about. So, it's just a different time today than it was then. I assume language is okay.
Yeah, say whatever the fuck you want.
Awesome. Thank you. I appreciate that. I just wanted to double check. I mean, I grew up in a time where if you were different, if you were a guy who was different, you were a faggot. And as somebody in a small Midwestern town, essentially, you didn't want to be that. You didn't want to stand out. You didn't want to have people pick on you. And, people got beat up for that shit. So you didn't want to identify as that. And as someone who now at this point in my life has ended up being, right now, I identify as queer, bisexual. I know that term's kind of gone out of favor a little bit, but it's it was a struggle to really see and come to terms with who I was, and it just took a lot of time, and like I said, a lot of mistakes along the way. So I stayed in the closet, both to everyone I knew and to myself, really up until college, and even then into being a young adult, being married, have kids, all of that. Still pretty much in denial about who I was, and it took until I blew up my marriage and after I turned 40, and blew that up, and really had an opportunity to, sometimes a phoenix rises from the ashes, I suppose, and sometimes you just really fuck something up, and it gives you a chance to just rebuild from scratch, which is largely what I ended up doing, and how I ended up being where I'm at. But I'm being real sort of general here. I know you wanted to get into probably some details or specifics.
No, I love that we're going general because it gives me a lot of places to go in.
Mhm.
And one of the things that I asked you, previously was, is there anything that's off the table? And you were
Yeah.
like, no, which is great for me because it's like, oh, good, I can ask whatever I want. But then also it's like, oh shit, I can ask whatever I want.
Yeah.
um,
Well, and I can also choose to, part of the luxury on my end is that I can choose to answer what I want to or how I want to answer it. So you can ask anything, and I'll be truthful and honest, and I generally do try to be an open book about my life. So yeah,
So
so go
let's
for it.
let's you mentioned your sexuality being bisexual, and I am I've it's always interesting because now that I've gone from both sides of the leather scene, both the heterosexual and the homosexual side, I've noticed that there are some differences,
Hmm.
and um, for you as because you are married to a woman and you how is it like how do you navigate those spaces and those times where you it's easy to say that just because you're bisexual doesn't mean like you want to fuck everything and blah 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 blah.
Hmm.
Like those are and all of that stuff is true, but like I'm a person who um, believes in needs. There are
Hmm.
needs, and as someone who, is sexually attracted to both men and women, there are certain needs that you may have that one gender may not be able to fulfill. And so, how do you navigate, especially being in the kink world and being, poly for lack of a better term, because I know that
Hmm.
you guys hate the term poly. Um,
I don't think we hate it, but it we were poly before we knew we were poly, and we were leather before we knew we were leather, and other people told us we were, and we said, really? Huh, okay. So we had to kind of figure that stuff out, and figure out what it meant. But both are right. Ultimately we are poly.
Yeah, it's and I've seen me having the privilege and the benefit of seeing you and your relationships with both Hagen and Elliot um, are very it's very different. So how would you, to someone who doesn't know you, kind of describe what that triad is?
Hmm. We are, we are a poly triad. There are two submissive men, one dominant woman. Uh, the way that we've always kind of characterized it, I mean, every relationship ultimately there is a power exchange, whether people want to admit it or not. Uh, Mistress Elliott often will talk about if you look at when you were a kid and you'd look at mom and dad, someone would decide where we're going to go out to eat. And dad may say, I want to go to this restaurant, and mom would say, no, I really don't. We're going to go to this one. Or in some families, it might have been the other way. Our experience was that mom was ultimately in charge and the
Yeah.
ultimate authority. And I think in the majority of families, it's kind of how things happen. Within, so for Elliot and I, we got married. We have danced around in terms of our dynamic until we really ended up where we are now. Took us a couple of years to kind of iron that out. We both technically are switches. So talk about greedy. I'm a switch and I'm bisexual. I just want everything.
You want it all, and you want it
Yeah,
now.
Jesus, that's terrible. But we danced around with that for a little while until we ended up where we were. And at the end of the day, for she and I, I wrote about this not too long ago that we're essentially at the end of the day we're a boy and girl who love each other, and we've chosen this power exchange model as something that we follow within our marriage, and it just adds a structure to it and builds in just a way of doing things. And in a lot of respects, I think it's a lot more honest than most married couples are. And once somebody accepts the fact that, hey, ultimately she's the boss,
Right.
and I'm going to do what I can to make her happy and to please her and to take care of her. And she's still going to consult with me. If there's something I really don't want to do, I'm not going to do it, or she's not going to make me do it. If it's something that would be bad for me or something that I'm really, really opposed to, she'll listen. It's not, she is the ultimate authority, but it's not unreasonable. And so I guess, it's just a way that we've kind of structured things for ourselves following this master slave dynamic. And it works for us, and it's worked out pretty well. I think for a lot of other relationships, when you're not as open and honest about who's the boss, I think it tends to create tension. And that's where, sometimes if we have run into problems, I don't want to pretend for anybody that our relationship is absolutely perfect every moment of the day. It's not. There are times where we have a disagreement. And we have to sort that out and work that out and talk. And I have to learn to listen again and really understand where she's coming from and why she's right, because she almost always is. And it's figuring that stuff out. But I think a lot of other couples, they don't have that honesty about who's in charge, about who has the ultimate authority and who's going to make the ultimate decisions on things. And I think that causes a lot of tension and a lot of push and pull between partners, and we don't really have that. After we were together for a few years, Hagen came into the picture and has been, a really positive addition to our lives. He's my best friend in the world and somebody I care a tremendous amount about and love and want to see nothing but the best for. And my understanding from what he says and from my experience feels very much the same way. I don't want to put words in his mouth, but I think that's true. And he loves Elliot the same way that I do. So that's kind of the nature of our relationship, essentially in a nutshell, is that, we're two men who are devoted to this wonderful woman and do everything we can to try to make her life be as easy and positive and for her to be able to accomplish the things that she wants to do.
I mean, and you brought up something that it's not a perfect relationship, and there are times when you have to have the discussions. I think when we look at especially in terms of the heterosexual side of the master slave dynamic, which we can go into a million conversations as to why I don't like that term, but that's not what we're here to do. Um, but
And
it's
I absolutely understand where you're at on that. I do. I wish there was another word for it
but
with our parlance, but yeah, we won't sidetrack on it.
we will side again because that's a deep sidetrack.
Mhm.
But one of the things that I've noticed that I've loved in watching watching the three of you's relationship is that I've seen that it isn't always peaches and roses, and there are moments when one might be upset with the other or anything like that, but it's never anything that happens or that sticks around for a long period of time.
No.
You guys do have. I've seen you guys have deep conversations and raw conversations,
Hmm.
um, and things that I think that even people who are not kink, but any relationship could really learn from watching how the three of you kind of interact with each other and one thing that I can see from the outside looking in is both you and Hagen's devotion to Mistress Elliot. I think that it's something that's absolutely beautiful, and for me as a budding sub, those are the things that like I look at and I go, wow, that is the model for what a relationship in this dynamic can be like, where it almost feels like Mistress Elliot hasn't taken the power. It's given to her.
Hmm.
And when you look at a lot of other relationships that I've seen in the community in the year or so that I've been in, it doesn't always seem that way. It doesn't always seem like, especially looking at the male female dynamic, it always seems like the female doesn't have any power. But you guys feel like you're empowered to serve.
Yeah, there is there's a strength in submitting or following a path of submission in a confident way. There is a strength to that. At the end of the day, I love this woman. I want to see her succeed. She wants to see me succeed, and we want to see Hagen succeed. So we're all on a team together. There may be moments where we disagree on something. There may be moments where she suggests that maybe we should do something. We refer to it sometimes as an Elizabethan model. And Queen Elizabeth I, when she was queen, was surrounded by this privy council, these really wise, strong, powerful lords, royals in their own right, who were powerful men. And she was smart enough to know that she didn't always know what the right thing to do was. So she would consult with them and ask them for their advice. And we very much advise, our mistress and tell her what we think, what our thoughts are, what we believe. And she is smart enough to listen to that and to not just assume that she's always right. At the end of the day, she's going to make the decision, and our role is to follow what her decision is, and we'll do that. If we always felt like she was, overriding, our thoughts or our concerns, that's where you start to see resentment come in. And one of our rules within our relationships with each other is that there are no resentments. They're just not allowed. So if
I love
something is
that.
bothering you, you have to tell somebody else what's up, why you're bothered, why you're upset, what's going on, what you feel they did, and have a conversation about it. And that lets you a not carry that around, but also b communicate it with the other person so they can hear what your experience is. And it just defuses a lot of things. The other thing that is sort of a cornerstone in terms of how we operate is that the three of us all come from an assumption of positive intent. I never believed that Elliot would do anything intentionally to hurt me, and vice versa. Same thing with Hagen. We all want the best for each other. So if I'm doing something where I'm fucking up and it's annoying her, or she's mad about something that I did, she's able to come to me with an assumption that I didn't do it to be bad or to be mean or to hurt her. I did it because I didn't understand. And I think that, and I didn't understand her emotions. I didn't understand her feelings about it or why something felt important to her. And it just changes the entire conversation. And it shifts it from being, you know, from being I hate you to instead being, when you did this thing, here's why that bothered me. And here's why, I would like to see, that not happen again. And we can then have a conversation about what our experiences were and share that with each other. So it just really, I think, diffuses so much in terms of where
Uh oh. Did we lose him? Oh no. No.
religions and more into
Okay.
discussions.
Okay, I think we lost you for a second there,
Oh, I'm sorry.
but it's fine. I got I think everybody kind of got the gist of what it was you were saying, especially when it comes to having those conversations and being, uh, not assigning malicious intent where
Yeah.
confusion could be the cause. I kind of want to get into you you again. So when you said that you kind of blew up your life
Hmm.
from your first marriage,
Oh, I
and
gloriously blew it up. Yes, I did.
is that around the time that you started? I guess the term to use would be experimenting with men.
No, I had been, I don't know if experimenting is the right word. We'll go with that for now. But no, that started in college, really. I was, a horny college kid, and saw an ad somewhere for some adult bookstore and went, and they had the video booths in the back. And I swear to God, my first gay encounter was with the most beautiful man, just gorgeous. And if it's going to happen, that's just a wonderful way for it to go. Um, and it was just a pretty positive experience. He was really, despite the fact that we were sharing a booth in the back of an adult bookstore, he was a really nice, sweet guy, and kind of took care of me. And it, essentially, I popped my cherry in that experience, and had a dick in my mouth for the first time, and you know, went through that, and then the struggle with that from there is that not only was I not wanting to be open with myself about who I was and about my orientation, but also there was nobody else I could talk to that I knew and share, what I'd been through. And so I had to process that on my own. And I think something as big as that, when you do that on your own, you're bound to screw up, where you come down on it. And I remained essentially closeted for many, many years. Continued to do things like that. AOL used to be a phenomenal place for anonymous random hookups. Then that evolved into Craigslist, and Craigslist was a magical, wonderful place back in the day. Uh, Not so much anymore, but it was a wonderful resource for somebody who was just looking to find another guy to play with. And I continued to do that stuff for years, and got married, had children, continued to do that stuff. I'm not proud of the fact that I put essentially, someone I loved and my children potentially in harm's way. Um, I don't want to just gloss over that. I've had to let go of the shame that with that. I like I said before, I grew up in a certain time where being out was harder, and being as that I was bi, it was a lot easier to let myself land on the hetero side
Right.
of things and just see myself that way and just deny to myself and to anyone else, in the world, this other part of me and this other part of my sexuality that, essentially didn't exist except when I let it out. So it was something I kind of managed and something that I did. Um, did a lot of crazy things that, went to, I can't tell you how many strangers' homes I went to. Drove my car over to, walked into their home, someone I'd never met before, had seen two pictures of them on, through Craigslist or through AOL, went to their house, and, I by all rights, I should have been, murdered in someone's basement. I engaged in more dangerous shit than anyone should have.
And I think
Made it,
that's the life of um, a closeted man.
yeah.
You essentially have these two lives that you're living. One is this, this good family man who goes to work and loves his
Hmm.
wife and takes care of the kids and
Hmm.
does all of these things because that's what society says you're supposed to do. And
Hmm.
then, in the middle of the night, you're sneaking into people's houses because because you need that, you know, dick for lack of a better term.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
It's that's that side that you can't, in as much as people try to, like, push that down and say, no, that's not me. It's always going to come up. If it's there, it's there.
Hmm.
And I think what you are to me is what happens when someone gets it right. You know what I mean? Like, you find you've gone through that. You've kind of lived that life, and then you said, I don't want to live this life anymore, either
Hmm.
consciously or subconsciously,
Hmm.
because regardless of whether the blow up, and I don't want to get into what happened in that because there's other people involved, and this is
Yeah.
essentially between me and you, obviously. But regardless of what happened and how that happened, uh, subconsciously it was, this is too much and things have to change. And I
Yeah.
think a lot of times, when those of us who blow up our lives, because I've blown up my life more than once, um, those of us who blow up our lives, we tend to do it because there's something that we're looking for that we're afraid to find,
Hmm.
and we
Well,
need. Go ahead.
yeah, I think sometimes you want out, and you want out on a really deep level. You want out of the situation that you're in. And even though you maybe consciously don't realize it, you end up doing things to self-destruct and sabotage.
Yes.
And I got sloppy, and my ex found stuff on the computer and confronted me with it. And, we spent a couple of years trying to save the marriage. And at one point, I had her say to me that it would have been different if I had been cheating on her with women, but because it was guys, she just couldn't get past it, which is a pretty crushing thing to hear.
Yeah.
When you're trying to come to terms with who in the fuck am I really, that's a really brutal thing. And and I saw both sides of that too. I had men I hooked up with who would say, "Well, you can't be bi. You've got to decide which one you're going to be, and you can either be gay or you can be straight, but you're going to be miserable until you're one or the other." And to me, that's as bad. And so I saw a lot of different takes on this, and then trying to make sense out of it all. And at the end of the day, things just fell apart. And I don't believe in rock bottoms. I don't think anybody ever hits a true rock bottom, but I think we have sort of moments of clarity. But mine was a really fucked up, distorted moment of clarity where, and it really wasn't, it's probably the polar opposite of it. I just decided that I was so fucked up and irredeemable, I ought to just dive in with both feet head first, whatever, and just live a debauched life. And somehow or other found myself drifting into kink with that.
See, and that was
And
actually going to be my next question. Is how did you, so from those humble beginnings, um, how did you wind up in kind of this world of kink and of leather?
Mhm.
But before we get into that, there was a comment that I wanted to say
Yeah.
um, on bisexuality and this idea that you have to choose between one or the other. I can only imagine, being in this situation, and because I've, when your wife at the time said, I would be able to deal with it more if you were cheating with a woman, but if
Hmm.
it was a man, that's the fact that it's a man that um that I can't get past. In my mind, kind of, I guess this is maybe a dichotomy, or the way I would actually be more open and me be more okay if my partner was cheating on me with a woman, because I'm like, okay,
Hmm.
I can't do anything about that. There isn't anything over there that
Right.
I can't compete with that. But if you're cheating on me with another man, that's a different story.
Right.
And so it's so interesting to hear, you know and I wonder how much of that it's in itself is kind of those Judeo-Christian,
Hmm.
Puritanism values that kind of are put on to something else we're going to get into, and what the role of man is supposed to take, as opposed to what how a man, like, what men actually are. And it's just that really just kind of, it stuck with me that she would say that, and say,
Yeah.
you know if it was a woman, I would be able to deal with it. Because it's a man, I can't.
Hmm.
Where but let's move into kind of how
Yeah.
you got into kink. um
You know, my I had at this point, blown up my marriage. We were getting divorced. I moved out into an apartment, and I like I said, I kind of felt like I'm just this fucked up, depraved individual. I can't be a part of a marriage. I can't be a part of, a relationship. I'm just going to do these horrible things, uh, or things that aren't acceptable within that context. I don't think I necessarily even thought they were horrible, but so I don't want to make it sound like I was absolutely destroying myself on the inside about it. But, I'm not going to function like this. I'm just a depraved person. So I had to just wrap myself in the filth. And found kink, found this website called FetLife, and found some groups and local people and started exchanging messages with people on there, and went to my first play party and played with a complete stranger. Should never do that. Um, but I did. And ended up connecting with someone at that event who ended up becoming my first mistress. And uh, had we got together, not in a dynamic, not dating or anything, but kind of got to know each other over the course of a couple weeks, really. And then sort of started dating, but there within the context of a DS dynamic, a dominant submissive dynamic with her on the top, me on the bottom. And I learned so much about the lifestyle, the community, the role of a submissive, protocols. Uh, she was an outstanding teacher, and I'm always sort of in debt to her for really the head start that she gave me by letting me just, like I said, kind of fall into this role and and experience it and get introduced to people and and uh, just learn
So, do you
and
think
be
of
a part of it.
yourself as? I know you said you're a switch, but are you more
Mhm.
comfortable in the submissive role?
Yeah, I mean, I will top someone. I'm probably more of a service top.
Okay.
As far as the day to day, being someone's dominant, being someone's master, I don't have that in me. Somebody's going to be having a shitty day. I'm not going to be able to tell them to go get me a cup of coffee. Just can't do it. And that's what you're supposed to be able to do. I just feel so badly for them, and I can get it myself. And I know that almost every dominant or every master or mistress out there feels that same way sometimes, that struggle of, well, it's just a cup of coffee. I can go refill it. I don't need to make them do it. And I know everybody kind of feels that in different moments within their relationships. So, I think, but I just know, and I've tried it, and I'm not good at it. It's just not something I'm capable of doing at that level. But there is a sadistic part of me, and I love to hurt someone, and do enjoy doing that. In a way, it's similar to where I put my bisexuality. I love women. I really enjoy men, and so I think there's a difference there.
Yes.
uh, if that's an okay metaphor to use, I love being a submissive, or a slave, but I enjoy topping
Right.
people,
I think
and that's fun to do.
I'm always, when it comes to sexuality, I've always believed that it's fluid and it's a spectrum,
Yeah,
and
it's the Kinsey scale thing. We're all somewhere on that.
we're somewhere on it. And I think it moves. I
Yeah.
think it's one of those things where you can really meet somebody and they could kind of inch your that scale somewhere
Hmm.
further down. You
Hmm.
know, with each person. Just because there are women, that I could fuck 17 girls, I'm still going to be a gay man because that's who I
Yeah.
am,
Yep.
deep down. And I think, it's when I envision relationships, it's always with a man. When I envision, even
Hmm.
dynamics, it's there's always a man involved in that. It
Hmm.
doesn't mean I won't necessarily play or get into situations with where women are involved. They're just gotta be dick in the room.
Yeah. Well, and one thing I have never gotten to experience, is actually dating a guy.
Really?
I've been, we've had men in our dynamic, and Hagen's a part of our dynamic now, and hopefully forever. But
Oh, you silenced out on me again. This is the joys of doing this over Zoom. Hold on, I'll be back in a second.
live together, and
Up.
I don't see it. it just seems wrong. Not wrong for me, not wrong for anybody else, but it just doesn't feel right. Um, yeah. So I
But
think we're maybe different degrees at the same place. Uh,
let me ask you this on that, because we
yeah.
did cut off a little bit. Do you think that do you think that it seems wrong for you because like that's kind of that last vestige of this is what a man is supposed to be, or do you just not have like not ever see a have or have not met at this point a man that you could see yourself having those stronger feelings for that you would want to like date?
Yeah. I don't know that I've met someone, so that's definitely true. But I also, it just, I think it would just be weird. Uh, it's sort of maybe, I will probably never be a cat person. Cats are okay. That's not right. I like dick more than cats, but but a lot more. But no, it's just not. I don't think it's who I am. As far as where I would fall on that scale or whatever, it's just not where I'm going to end up. I just for whatever reason I think mesh better in the day to day with women than I do with men in that regard.
So I'm going to cross dating Anders off of my
Uh,
2022 plan.
you can
Um,
put it on there. I think it's something that I would like to try, and that's something that I would obviously can't do of my absolute own volition, but I think that's something that I would like to experience at some point.
yeah, I think that it's
To have a boyfriend, I've never had a boyfriend.
aw.
So.
I mean, it's. I will tell you, as someone who has, yeah, I haven't dated a lot. Um, really, any. I mean, my first real relationship is the same relationship I'm in, so say that. I guess that says a lot about who I am. But I think I get. I mean, I definitely get it and understand because, like, I could not see myself at this point in my life dating a woman.
Hmm.
I would just be like, girl, gone somewhere. Like it's I am too ingrained into who I am right now.
Yeah.
Um but so let's kind of talk about how uh I do want to get into this really quickly. You have an interesting DC life that has nothing to do with kink, but
No.
it's one of those cool things about you that like I think is just amazing. As the political junkie myself,
Hmm.
why don't you tell people what you used to do in DC?
Okay. Well, I won't drop names of
Of
anyone I
course
worked
not.
for, but I worked for a political publication in DC for a number of years, and then jumped and worked on Capitol Hill for a prominent Democratic congressman for a while, and then was part of a presidential campaign. I've worked on Senate campaigns, governor's races, congressional races, primarily doing web stuff. So that's where I was. But I've been a part of this of of the DC culture. Was there for not quite a decade, and did a lot of saw a lot of stuff, and got to touch a lot of. That sounds wrong. I was going to say got to touch a lot of people, but I didn't. Um,
I mean,
you know,
you were in
just having a
DC. I'm sure you did.
yeah, yeah, but I worked in the Capitol building.
That's
My
amazing.
office was right inside the Capitol. I've been inside the White House a number of times, and gotten to what like election night. I'm going to date myself a little bit here. I already kind of have, but we all want to be 17. You know that, right? Or 21 or
Right.
23 or something. But 2000, when the Gore Bush thing happened, which we all thought was the craziest election we've ever experienced until Donald Trump came along. Um, I was supposed to go on a cable news network, and I would sometimes get to go on as a talking head, and probably once a week, every other week, something like that, and spout my opinions on what was happening. And I got picked up by this network. They would send a limo to pick you up. Got in the car, got driven over to the studio, got my makeup done, so I'm ready to go on the air. And as we were actually on the limo ride over, we word had come down that Bush had won the election that night, And so I'm like, okay, I'm gonna have to talk about Bush winning. I was a Democrat. I am a Democrat. So I was a little heartbroken about that, but I got my job to do, so I'm gonna go do it. Ride over there, get my makeup done, and while I'm waiting to go on the air, all hell breaks loose, and we find out that the election's going to be contested, and sit around for about an hour, and then ride back, and both ways went right past the White House, and got to look at the White House as I'm riding by, wondering who's going to be in there next.
Oh
So
wow.
you know, it- other people had more personal experiences with all of it, but uh, with that stuff. But I do have these personal connections to the stuff that happened, and to even some of the people who are still involved with a lot of this, and how things are supposed to work, and a lot of respect for the institutions. It's hard not to if you've worked in it and been a part of it. A lot of it's really fucked up. It is making sausage like legislation,
You don't want
and
to
the
know how the
more you
sausage is made.
yeah, you don't want to see it. You don't want to see it. And now we've got this 24/7 cable coverage, and everybody's a critic of everything. So, the infrastructure crap that's going on right now. Back in LBJ's day, this same shit would have been going on. You just wouldn't have heard about it every day.
Right. Well,
No one.
and the thing is, one of the, I think is an interesting connection point that we have is that means that we were in DC at the same time.
Hmm.
Like we were there. We didn't know each other, obviously,
Right, right.
but we're in DC at the same time. And to me, those are those things that I think about. Kind of in my quiet moments with the people that I'm connected to
Hmm.
now is how easy it would have been for us to have, mind you, there's a couple year age difference between us, but there how easy it could have been for us to be in the same place, and
Hey, if you'd
or
have answered the right Craigslist ad, I'm telling you what, you
yeah.
would have.
I could have answered a Craigslist ad.
There you go.
We might have had a whole completely different situation than what we
You
have now. Because I
you'd
was a
have
looker
popped up
back then.
again.
Let me tell you,
Hey, you'd have popped up in the community here, and I said, "Wait a minute, I know that
I know that guy. I know him
guy."
biblically. I know
Yeah,
him.
but
But
yeah,
it's no. Go ahead.
yeah. I was just gonna say, and the other piece of my life that I think is really important. I lived with my ex. We both went to grad school in Georgia, and so I lived in Georgia for 3 years, a little longer, and got a really good taste of the South from that. And while I think a lot of things are fucked up and wrong with the South, and I'm not going to be a rah rah cheerleader for it, I have a kind of an appreciation for Southern culture, some aspects of it, that and an appreciation for it. So those 2 points in my life have shaped me a lot, in terms of my view of the world, and all of that.
You do give off kind of a Southern gentleman genteel vibe,
Oh, I'll take that.
um,
I'll
and
take that all the
and
time.
it's when people. I think when I first met you and Hagen and Elliot, kind of, and I've talked about this with Elliot before. Um, I immediately was like, "That's the gay one," um, just because, like, the nose knows, and
Yep.
then we had that forum, and you were
Hmm.
moderating the forum, and um, I think you guys kind of got to see me. Everyone at that point previous to
Hmm.
that had seen me as kind of this fun and kind of
Hmm.
airheaded dude who's just like here for the good time and here for the party. And then kind of in that moment, you guys got to see me switch and
Hmm.
and become this articulate. Here is the here are the facts, here's the way that I see the world, like let's have this discussion. And I can't the conversations that we've had with Elliot is like that was kind of the moment where you guys were like, yes, this is a person that we want in our life.
Absolutely. Well, yeah, but yes, that probably is a moment where that happened. I'm not going to argue that. But yeah, I mean, you would have made your way through anyway, I'm
At some
sure.
point, yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
um and so let's talk a little bit about the we've heard from, if you've listened to Section Shade, we've kind of heard how you and Elliot got together.
Hmm.
Um, if you want to touch on that a little bit, But my thing is how what I haven't asked, and I probably should, is how the black dog came about. What was
Sure.
the impetus of let's make our own dungeon space and let's do all of these things that we want to do in our space.
Hmm. You want the God's honest truth about it?
Sure.
Elliot, she still does occasionally, but at that point she was doing more regular work as a pro dom, and seeing clients. And we didn't have any place else, so she was seeing clients in the basement of our home. And we had to schedule all that around when we had kids, when other things were going on. And it was, just kind of grew to be a hassle, and she was doing it regularly enough that we had the idea of, what if we just rent a place where, we can set up your own small little dungeon and you can see clients there and do that. And we started looking at places. And then we started thinking about, at that point, we regularly, probably once a month or so, had friends over to our house, and we'd have, maybe 10, 15 people total. And it would just kind of turn into a late night, folks drinking a little bit more than they should, some play, and just a lot of joking around, hanging out. And so it kind of turned into, well, what if we get a place that's big enough that we could do that there too? And then we start looking at places, and then we start thinking, well, if we got a little bit bigger place, we could actually have some events. We could have, charge people, and do actual events, and do all of that. And it just blew up into this. We're gonna have an actual dungeon, and we're gonna do actual events, and real things, and we're gonna have 70 people over, and do all this stuff. And so it was the classic definition of mission creep. We started off with one specific goal, and it was like, well, what if we did this? Well, we could do that too. Well, what about that? And suddenly, you're planning these events that you never in a million years thought you would do.
And one of the things that I love about the dog, and I think, and you can kind of speak to whether this is something that's intentional or something that just kind of happened, is the feeling that although there could be 70 people in the room, everyone feels like they know each other. There are no strangers in the black dog.
Yep.
And um, even like we recently did something and I brought some people with me. Like it was so cool to kind of see how you guys just kind of embraced everyone. And is that something that is you know something that you guys sought out to do, or is that just something that kind of happens organically? I know it's not the same as like going to other dungeons and things in the area where it's just like any free for all, kind of anybody can show up. But even then, I mean, there still has to be when you don't know someone a little bit of hesitancy that I don't ever feel when I see people in there because I didn't feel it the first time I was there.
Good. That's wonderful to hear. That's about the highest compliment anyone could pay us, I think, is that sense of feeling welcomed. We used to, Elliot started it. We used to run a social group in Lawrence, KVK, Cobb Valley Kink, that's still around. Someone else is running it now who actually lives in Lawrence. But Elliot had started it, and we kind of ran it. And a big deal to us when we would have events is if someone new shows up, we're going to go greet them, we're going to pull them into our circle, and we're going to introduce them to someone else. Um, so we're not stuck with this new person for the whole night. We're actually helping them by introducing them to more people, and that was just kind of part of the ethic that we had with it, and the way that we approached treating folks. And at the end of the day, it's just being a good host. And so that's just kind of carried over into what we do with the black dog. That if someone comes to an event, they're a guest in our home, and we want them to be treated well. We want them to feel welcomed. And I always try to make a point when anyone comes, especially for the first time, but of just trying to say, hey, welcome. Go, please go on inside, make yourself at home, and just try to help broach that kind of awkwardness that I think people do feel when you show up somewhere for the first time and don't know anyone.
Right.
So that's just kind of what we try to do. You can't control what other people are going to do. uh, when we ran that group, we had some people show up to an event. They never came close to the rest of the group. They sat off at a table by themselves and then complained about how nobody had bothered to talk to them. We didn't even know they were there. because it's so far away. And sometimes somebody's going to be a wallflower, but if you can at least say hi and glad to have you. And I also always try to thank people for coming at the end of the night. And it's just, I think that's how the three of us were brought up as kids. If someone was a guest in your home, you said, "Hey, it's great to see you. Welcome. Glad to have you here." And then when they leave, "It was really great to see you. Hope to see you again soon." And that's just kind of what you do. Um, the another difference too, I think, is that we don't run this as a business. Our dungeon is a money loser. We are never going to make money off of it. It's a labor of love, and when we have events, it does help to pay for some of the costs of it. But unless we were to, really stretch ourselves thinner than we want to be stretched, we're never going to turn a profit on it. So we've just accepted the fact that we're doing this because it's something we want to do, and so it's not about how many people can we get in the door. It's about how good of a time does everyone have when they're here, and that's what it should be, hopefully,
And
about
I
it.
think that's what makes that space so special, is that it is, I've seen you guys kind of bend over backwards, almost literally in some cases, to ensure that the people who are there have a good time, and that the people who are there feel welcome and honored to be there, because it's not easy to get in. Like, it's one of those things where it's not easy to get in. I remember kind of one of my first experiences at the dog. It's actually my favorite memory of the dog was the private birthday party that you guys did for me.
Hmm.
And there wasn't a lot of people there. It was very kind of impromptu and last minute,
Hmm.
but it was this feeling of, these are my people. And I think
Hmm.
that's what the dog kind of represents to a lot of us, is that, like, I'm hanging out with my people. And I can only say thank you to you, and to Mistress Elliot, and to Hagen, for, like, letting us into your home and into, like, that part of you. And I think it's one of those things that is amazing, and why those of us who have experienced that are so fiercely loyal to the dog, is that we do feel like all of us feel individually represented there.
Hmm.
um and that's a feeling that, like, you can't recreate that. You can't manufacture that feeling. And it's the place where I do feel comfortable to kind of stretch my wings, and,
Hmm.
and try things that I normally wouldn't try, or do things that normally I would be afraid to do, because there's that sense of, I know that if I'm in this building, I'm gonna be okay.
Yeah. Well, and that's our hope. Um, you know, we tend to cater to adults. I don't want to sound condescending towards someone who's 23, or younger. But we tend to have people come to our events who are grown up, and it doesn't mean everybody's old. It doesn't mean everybody's middle aged or anything like that, because that's absolutely not the case. But we do like to have we do tend to just see folks who are grown up, and one of the things we have the luxury of doing, because we've sort of fostered or nurtured this kind of community within our own walls, we really don't have dungeon monitors, because we don't need to. Other people are going to see things, they're going to alert us if something's going on, or they're going to step in on their own.
Right.
And and we've just kind of created this environment that I think is safe. We have, I always knock on wood, um, we have not had trouble or incidents or problems with people attending, in
Then
part because
attend.
we don't, yeah, yeah, we don't just let anyone in. For the most part, you have to know somebody. That's the easiest way.
Right.
Or we meet you, get to know you a little bit, and have a generally good feeling about you. And our guts are usually right between the three of us in terms of, is somebody okay? And and we do a vetting process that's a little different. It's not just sitting down asking you five questions and saying, yeah, okay, great, you can come. It's, really trying to make sure that somebody has been active in the community. And so we're not for first timers. We're
How
not
the hell
looking
I
for
got in
folks.
is beyond me, y'all.
You were not a first timer, and we had met and we had seen you, and we'd seen you at things, and you also came with somebody else the first time.
I did.
So that doesn't mean you would have needed to. I think, had you just requested to come, I'd seen you at things. I'd seen you when you did the fire play demo that you did, and some of that, and at that event, and had talked to you and had a good feeling about you. So, if we have doubts or questions about someone, then we're definitely going to be vetting pretty hard and checking to see, you know, have they been to things, and really trying to look into folks, not necessarily backgrounds, but their experience, and talking to other people in the community. So if there's someone we know and we trust that you're friends with who will vouch for you, then that's a pretty good, case to be made for you that you're going to be okay.
Absolutely.
Or if somebody brings you to an event with them, they're responsible for your behavior. So if you act up and show your ass and cause trouble, it's going to reflect badly on your friend. So people generally don't want to do that. I
Yeah,
think the
I'm
other thing, I
very
think
careful
the
about who I bring.
benefit.
If
Oh,
Go
go ahead.
ahead.
I'm sorry.
No, go ahead. I'm sorry.
I was just gonna say, I think the other thing that benefits us is that we've got a lot of antique and faux antique furniture. And so there's an element of being at grandma's house that I think just puts everybody in their best damn behavior.
I make the joke all the time that I feel like my credit score goes up 500 points every time I walk in the building because it looks like old money in there.
Yeah,
Um, so I know we're getting close to our time. I have one more question for you.
sure.
I have a bunch more, but I think for now I'll just have one more question for
Okay.
you. What's next for the dog?
We are working on, I think I'm okay to say this. I think it's an open secret at this point. We are working on a new space. We had an incident, trying to remember how long ago it was now, 9 months ago maybe, where someone within our community outed us to our neighbors, and it just prompted us to decide that we needed to do something that would make us more secure. So we're in the process of working on that. It's probably going to be a year plus before that happens. In the meantime, we're starting to do events here again. We had kind of put those on the back burner for a little bit, just to try to make sure that folks were safe and we didn't have cops turning up or any problems like that. So we feel like we've navigated our way through that, and we're starting to work on solutions toward a future new space. And progress is happening on that. I don't think we're at a point that we're ready to, tell the whole story of what's going to happen with it, but it should be pretty fucking spectacular. So,
I am
yeah.
excited. I can say that I have been to the location, and good lord, if you guys are in for a fucking treat. I swear to
if,
you.
if
Um,
if we can pull off what we want to pull off, it's going to be pretty significant.
and
So,
if there are three people that I think can pull off what you want to pull off, you were the three people that can make it happen.
uh,
Especially with the support that you have in the community. I think that you were probably one of the few people in the community that if you said, "Hey, we need," um, the community would respond in kind, and I think that's a testament to the three of you as individuals and as a unit. Um, I want to thank you for sitting down. I definitely did not get anywhere nearly as far. The thing about these conversations is that they are so fast and they happen so quickly that like you only really get to scratch the surface. So I hope that we can have you on again to talk about some other things and get deeper into the life of Mr. Anders.
I'd be delighted. I appreciate the time, love you, and look forward to speaking with you soon.
Yes. All right, guys. Thank you so much for watching another episode of Kansas City Legends. Uh, before you go, Anders, is there anybody who wants to get in touch with you? How can they get in touch with you?
You can hit me up on FetLife. I'm Slant6, SLANTSIX on Fet. That's probably the easiest, best way to do it.
Yeah. Yeah. For those of us, you've got the for who would like to help donate to keep this channel going. There's that scroll that's at the bottom of the screen. We are always looking for donations to help grow the channel. We've got a lot of cool things that are coming in the future. We thank you very much for listening and for watching. Again, Anders, thank you so much for being here and being such
Thank you for
a
having me.
gracious guest on the show. And we will talk to you guys later. Have a good